Space. They say it's the final frontier, but for me, it's the final mistake. I knew from the moment I was strapped into the Soyuz one something was wrong, but sometimes duty demands more than your fear, and today, that duty will cost me everything. I wasn't always the man floating here in this tin can, racing around Earth at impossible speeds. I was just Vladimir Komarov, husband, father, son. My wife and I had 2 children, and my life before all of this was simple. Growing up, I was the kind of kid who looked at the sky with dreams bigger than my own hands. I always wanted to fly. Maybe that's what led me to become a cosmonaut, to be one of the first to venture into the vast unknown. My first mission in 1964, Voskhod 1, was a success. We orbited Earth, came back down, and life returned to normal. Well, almost normal. It's hard to go back to regular life after you've touched the stars. But now, as I stare down at Earth for what might be the last time, I wonder, was it worth it? They told me Soyuz 1 would be another step forward for Soviet space exploration. My backup was Yuri Gagarin, the first man in space, and between the two of us, there wasn't a more qualified team on Earth or off of it. But even Gagarin, the hero of our people, raised concerns about this spacecraft. I mean, it didn't take an expert to see it. The uncrewed tests were a disaster. The systems kept failing, and some parts hadn't even been tested. I raised my concerns too, but I guess when you're caught between your duty and your survival, there's really no choice. My country needed a hero, and who was I to say no? Then it started. A soft beep, just a small sound that meant something was wrong. I glanced over, and there it was, the solar panel. It hadn't deployed. Now you have to understand, a spacecraft without power is like a car with no fuel. You're going nowhere fast. It's not like I could just step outside, fiddle with a wrench and fix it. And then, the temperature inside the capsule started rising. If you've ever been in a sauna that someone refuses to turn off, you'll know exactly what I was feeling. Only imagine that sauna floating thousands of kilometers above Earth with no exit. I radioed back to mission control. Of course, they said they were working on it. I wasn't holding my breath. I tried to stay calm. After all, what could go wrong in space, right? Chuckles darkly. Yeah, everything. I was stuck in a glorified tin can with failing systems and a slowly rising temperature. Outside the window, Earth rotated beneath me, so close but a million miles away at the same time. The weirdest thing about space is the silence. The only sound is your own breath, your own heartbeat pounding in your ears. Out here it's just you, alone, with nothing but your thoughts for company. That's when I started thinking about my wife, my children. I'd promised them I'd come back. I'd promised my daughter I'd tell her stories of the stars. What was I supposed to say now? Then it happened, the moment I'd been dreading. The ship began its descent. Re-entry was supposed to be the easy part, right? Just fall back to Earth. But as the craft hurtled downward, something went terribly wrong. The parachutes, my one safety net, they failed. The spacecraft was plummeting, faster and faster, and I was trapped inside, watching the planet rush toward me at impossible speeds. I gripped the controls, but nothing responded. The pressure in my chest grew heavier as we raced down, the heat building, the metal creaking. I screamed into the radio, "This devil ship! Nothing I lay my hands on works properly." I knew this was the end. There was no way out. The ejection system didn't work. The parachutes were tangled, and the ship was screaming toward the ground. I looked out of the tiny window, my vision blurring from the G-forces, Earth growing larger, closer, more real. Part of me wanted to believe I could make it, that something would work at the last minute. But deep down, I knew the truth. The ship was done for, and so was I. My voice cracked through the radio, calm but hollow, as I said my final words. I feel excellent. Everything's in order. I don't know why I said that. Maybe I didn't want them to hear the terror in my voice. Or maybe in those last few moments, I just wanted to sound brave. But then, the transmission cut out. And then, there was nothing. The ship hit the ground at unimaginable speed. The impact tore it apart, and in an instant, everything was over. When they found me, what was left of me, they said all that remained was a charred lump. My body, my mind, everything consumed by the crash. The only part they could identify was a single heel bone. That's how space remembers you. Not as a hero, not as a man, just as a charred piece of bone in a twisted wreckage. My story, my last descent, was one of failure. But it didn't have to be. Soyuz 1 wasn't ready. The systems weren't tested. They weren't prepared for what could go wrong. And because of that, I lost everything. But this story isn't just about space. It's about all of us. Because, like me, most people aren't ready when disaster strikes. Whether it's a space mission, a hurricane, or an earthquake, we have to be prepared. You don't want to be sitting in the dark, waiting for help that might never come. So take my story as a warning. Have your supplies ready: food, water, blankets. Keep them in plastic bags to stay dry. Make sure they're packed and ready to go. Because when disaster hits, there's no time to prepare. You either have what you need or you don't. Thank you for listening to my story. It's not just about space, it's about survival. So please, take a moment to reflect. Are you prepared? If this story moved you, share it with others and make sure they're ready too. Because when it comes to survival, there are no second chances.